Good afternoon. I'm Edward Probert. I'm the Canon Chancellor at Salisbury Cathedral. This is the next of our online reflections during this lockdown period. Last night one of my brothers rang. We hadn't spoken for some months, and so we had quite a lot to talk about and a lot of catching up to do. Naturally, these days these conversations tend to range over how everyone is, who's been experiencing what during this period, and going over frustrated travel plans and that kind of thing. David mentioned his sister-in-law, who lives in Spain and who had been driving to her annual retreat. She'd driven 6 hours across Spain when she heard news of the impending lockdown. She stopped to think about it, decided she probably didn't want to get stuck in a retreat house for many months perhaps, so she turned around and drove back. In other words, she drove for 12 hours and went nowhere. That strikes me as the absolute antithesis of a retreat. Ironically, of course, had she stayed at home, she would have entered a kind of retreat, because that's the state in which all the country she lives in, and pretty well all the country that we live in, finds ourselves in. It's not perhaps the voluntary retreat which she had been intending. It's an involuntary one in which millions of us find ourselves. Across these 40 years or so in which I've taken part in the occasional retreat, I've seen the gradual decline of the retreat phenomenon within the church. Fewer people go on them. Retreat houses have very often become uneconomic and have shut. I'm not really sure why that should be, but maybe things sometimes just have their day. As Ecclesiastes puts it, there is a time for every matter under heaven. But it's curious that just as so much in our society, communications, retail, travel, has become faster, more numerous in its opportunities, more complicated. In that same period, these opportunities to retreat into a simpler, less distracted, quieter place have rather melted away. Well, they haven't melted away for me and for you. We've been given the opportunity on a plate for at least 3 weeks more, according to the Foreign Secretary, to live here in our very own retreat houses. This is a time to take advantage of less distraction, to focus more, to read and to think more, to reflect more. For none of us is this a way of life we've chosen. And I suspect we haven't, many of us, been thinking of this as the season of opportunity. But for everything there is a season, and we need to seek out what this particular season is. And since that conversation with my brother last night, I've been thinking of this as the season of retreat. Whenever we do come out of this retreat for the country as a whole, I think we'll find it to be a poorer, more indebted place, perhaps a rather less secure feeling place. But it's possible also that we will find it at the same time to be a place, a country, which has learned to value simple things like neighbourliness, the silence of reduced traffic, the more insistent singing of the birds, Just the simple fact of being alive, that daily gift. John's Gospel tells us that Mary Magdalene hurried to the tomb of Jesus so early in the morning that it was still dark when she got there. Finding no one there in the tomb, she ran back to Peter and the other disciples and brought two of them. Then she too, it would seem, ran back to the tomb. When they'd gone, she stood there crying, had another look in the tomb, had a conversation with two people she found there. And then she looked round and found herself face to face with Jesus. Now, Mary was busy and distracted. She wanted to be active. She strained every sinew to find Jesus. Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless till they find their rest in you. God of glory, by the raising of your Son, you have broken the chains of death and hell. Fill your church with faith and hope. For a new day has dawned, and the way to life stands open in our Saviour, Jesus Christ. Amen.